Vladimir Putin cemented his title of most feared leader on the planet, following the death of his vocal opponent Alexei Navalny. Putin's murderous regime has been well known for decades. However, it seems to have escalated over the past few years. The Ukraine war, nuclear weapons, ties with China, criticisms of the West, and the destruction of any opposition have all been hallmarks of Putin's reign. Sky News All-Stars take a look at Vladimir Putin's terrifying, murderous regime. Vladimir Putin is terrifying. Speak ill of him and you'll soon regret your actions. This is the everyday reality of 144 million Russians who have been living under Putin's rule for 25 years. The latest casualty of free speech in Russia was the recent death of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, which Professor of Political Science Peter Matthews describes as a tragedy.
The world continues to react this morning to the shock death of Alexei Navalny. Most, of course, are pointing the finger firmly at the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin. Joining me live is Professor of Political Science at Cypress College in Los Angeles, Peter Matthews. Peter, good morning our time to you. Awful news coming out of Russia with the death of Alexei Navalny.
Good morning, Tim. It really is awful news because he symbolized opposition to authoritarian regime, dictatorship. He wanted to bring in democracy and have more freedom. And a lot of people across Russia support that. And they've seen this as him dying in prison as very questionable. And it's a very tremendous setback, in a sense, to the people there that want more democracy, but also to the world as a whole. He was a symbol. It's a tragedy.
All fingers are being pointed at Putin for the death, with Sky News commentator Peter McGoran saying Navalny's death is a direct responsibility of Putin's murderous regime.
Well, back to our lead story. The world is reacting this morning to the untimely death of Alexei Navalny, Vladimir Putin's fiercest rival, of course, just 47 years of age. Joining me now is former Minister in the Howard Government and Bondi Partners Senior Advisor Peter McGoran. Peter, morning.
Good morning.
The finger firmly pointed at Putin and his regime here.
And rightly so. If Putin's not guilty of murder, then he's certainly guilty of manslaughter, because he put the dissident firstly in the position of failing health, having poisoned him, and then remote and distant from all health and family oversight and like. So this is a direct responsibility of Putin's murderous regime.
He adds the regime will be impossible to overthrow without foreign intervention.
And look, it's awful, no matter how you look at it, but how's it going to change? It's, you know, you're not allowed to protest.
Agreed. Have a look at North Korea, have a look at China, have a look at how China has stripped away the centuries-long freedoms and legislative independence of Hong Kong. So no, a brutal regime that imprisons, tortures, murders its own citizens is impossible to without foreign intervention.
Navalny's body has not been released to his family, despite pleas and a demand that a thorough investigation be undertaken, according to his assistant.
Alexei Navalny
was murdered, his spokesperson later declared. She said the 47-year-old's body is being held by Russian authorities so they can investigate. His supporters believe they're trying to cover up the truth.
We
are continuing to wait for the official death certificate and release of the body. We demand that Alexei Navalny's body be handed over to his family immediately.
The Australian's associate editor, Graham Lloyd, says the brutal treatment of the opposition shows what Putin is capable of.
I think it underscores the ruthless nature of Vladimir Putin. Whatever the cause of death was, it's the Putin regime that has put Navalny into prison, transported him to Siberia, and now within weeks he's dead. This is happening at a time that the West is seen to be a little bit reticent on the war in Ukraine. And really it's a reminder of what Vladimir Putin is capable of and how we should be well and truly concerned.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese publicly condemned Putin for the death of Alexei Navalny, saying Australia holds the Russian leader responsible for his death.
Well, this is, of course, a tragedy. And Australia is shocked and saddened by the news of Alexei Navalny's death. And we hold Vladimir Putin and the Russian regime responsible for this death in prison. Vladimir Putin is an authoritarian. And we have a divide in the world between authoritarian regimes and democracies. Just to our north, we've seen the greatest democratic exercise on a single day in human history, with the election of a new president of Indonesia on February 14. And it stands in stark contrast. We cannot take democracy for granted. We need to cherish it and nurture it. And we need to call out the behaviour of authoritarians like Vladimir Putin. Thanks very much.
And in another devastating blow to democracy, floral tributes to Alexei Navalny have been removed and his supporters detained.
Overseas now, and flowers laid to honour Alexei Navalny in Moscow have been removed by authorities following his death in a Russian prison. More than 400 people have been detained while paying tribute to the former opposition leader and fierce Putin critic.
The tributes keep coming. A steady stream of people mourning the loss of a man whose fight for their future had cost him his life.
He was a real character. This is a man who is not afraid. We have few brave people now. It is very sad.
The whole world should know that there are people who are sad, who are terrified and who are shocked, who think that all the political prisoners should be freed.
There have been hundreds of detentions, most released with a warning, some held overnight, and masked men bagging up the flowers from memorials too. The police presence in Moscow markedly higher than normal. Just like the people who've come to pay their respects, who are told to move on, the police have told us we only have 7 minutes to do our filming here. But I think the fact that you still have large numbers of people coming to lay flowers 2 days after Alexei Navalny's death shows you what kind of an impact, what kind of a mark he leaves, certainly within a certain section of Russian society.
Meanwhile, Ukraine is facing its own life or death situation against Russia as they continue to surrender land to Putin's army, pleading for foreign funding.
Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from the eastern city of Advika near Donetsk, citing severe ammunition shortages. President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke in Munich, saying it is a reminder of the urgent need for Western support and funding.
Russian forces raise their flag over another piece of stolen land. Ukrainian troops chose to pull back from the eastern town of Avdiivka, a painful retreat. But a powerful reminder for Western allies meeting in Germany of what's at stake if they fail to keep arming Ukraine. It's why the Ukrainian president needs weapons, not hero worship.
If Ukraine will be alone, you have to understand what will be. Russia will destroy us, destroy Baltic, destroy Poland, and they can do it.
Despite the danger, the US has yet to approve key funding for Ukraine, and there's concern about what another potential Donald Trump presidency might mean. Volodymyr Zelensky invited the former president to visit the front line for himself.
I think if we are in dialogue how to finish the war, we have to demonstrate people who are decision makers what does it mean, the real war, not in Instagram.
Sky News All-Star Joe Siracusa agrees, saying Ukraine is on life support.
Also, I mean, just to close on Putin, I mean, look, clearly the sanctions from the war haven't done him any trouble, right? He's clearly not concerned by Western leaders. At the moment, the US is squabbling over funding for Ukraine, so the tide, perhaps he thinks, is turning in Russia's favour in the war. He's taking out his opponents. I mean, it's just a show of how things have turned for him and the strength that he has, that Putin has over the West.
Well, it shows us several things, Pete. You're quite right. The sanctions regime has failed. If anything, Russia has got renewed economic strength by relying on itself and new friends, as a matter of fact. So sanctions don't work. And he's not worried. Europe is divided about what Donald Trump or anybody else is going to do in the future. And that's one of his goals, too. And let's be frank about it. Ukraine is on life support. Even if they get any more ammunition from the United States, they're still going to have to work out some kind of departure this year, or some kind of diplomatic solution. So
what do you think that is?
Won everything.
I mean, I got to go, Joe. But what? Just quickly, what's the solution? A carve up? I mean, the only solution would be to give him all of Ukraine, wouldn't it?
No, I think Putin is going to take what he could have taken a year and a half ago. That is, he wanted the Donbass area. He wants to make sure Crimea. My beef with Zelensky is he probably could have had the same deal, 2 years ago, and he's going to suffer 500,000 casualties and take what he's got coming. So it's all a very sad case. But I'll tell you what, in the real world, people they play hard, and so we have to get used to this. This is the way of the future.
True. Joe, good to see you as always.